Hello, business innovators and educators. You're listening to The Enterprise Learning Architect. I'm your host, Chris Knotts, here to guide you through practices and ideas you can use to help build a culture of learning in your organization. Stay tuned to power up your professional playbook as we have conversations with exceptional people who share their experience in achieving successful learning outcomes. Ready to innovate, educate, and iterate? Let's do it. Welcome, friends, to the Enterprise Learning Podcast. Today, we're pleased once again to welcome Tyler Dockery to the conversation. Last time Tyler joined us, we discussed the differences and some overlaps in how we develop and deliver learning services in commercial settings versus academic settings. If you listened to that conversation, you heard us briefly touch on a course that we developed together on using artificial intelligence in enterprise L&D departments. Today, we dedicate our entire conversation to the topic of AI from a learning perspective. We talk about how people tasked with enabling the professional workforce with AI skills can approach some of the fundamental concepts we use in our class. I hope that this gets you started on the road to AI literacy, if you're an L&D professional or just somebody who wants to cultivate AI literacy in your teams. As a reminder, Tyler is a professor at Wake Technical College, North Carolina's largest technical college, and has been for almost 20 years now, and we've collaborated on all sorts of training and learning projects. Enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, that's a little distracting, isn't it? Staring, watching ourselves. I'm a little captivated. Our producer's saying to get going. No, the other way. Zip, zip. Get it going. Hey, let's see if we can get to we're only at 21 seconds of this quality. We've got to drag this out a little bit.
This is so
yes, that's all for Toby. Now, staring at us is not very interesting, but staring at Toby and trying to get a reaction, that's a little better.
Gosh, I'm handsome. I need glasses.
He looks very stoic, doesn't he? Look at the young man, keep himself hydrated.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that time that we were having a little bit of recreational time and you started calling the game like a football announcer? Do you remember that?
Yes.
You do remember?
Yes.
That was so funny, man. And you created this weird recursion when you were announcing on the funniness. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Knotts is very amused. Look at him. He can barely contain himself. And it was kind of like when your kid does something naughty, but it's also kind of funny. So you're kind of pissed at him, but then you're also trying not to laugh.
If it's funny, you don't get in trouble. You get to work on your timing. The chops are good, but what can you do?
Oh, and that's what happened that night because you dissipated my ire is what happened. And to dissipate my ire, well, it doesn't happen easily.
Trouble.
All right.
Capital Trub.
Enterprise Learning Pod. We're talking about AI in education and learning. TD, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all doing here and having me here.
I want to say one thing now about this. So I actually have resisted doing a topic explicitly about AI for quite some time. This despite the fact it's literally one of my favorite topics, if not my favorite topic. Been an AI nerd for 20 years and we've been talking about it for probably close to that, yeah?
Yeah, just slightly less. Yeah.
We've actually grown into quasi-respectable professionals in our field, as they say, in the industry.
I hope.
That's jargon for you. But so we're legitimately in this space. We can say that without any imposter syndrome or Dunning-Kruger. Is it Dunning-Kruger syndrome? Yeah. Okay. Toby's nodding. Hey, we got a reaction. We should get one of those soundboards that has the sound effects for moments like this.
No, you should absolutely not do that. Don't do that.
Anyway, so yeah, well, we got a long way to go to get Joe Rogan level ratings. That's all I'm saying. He doesn't use that though, does he? Thousands of episodes in, four figures.
Couldn't tell you anything about Joe Rogan.
No,
he's bald. That's where it ends.
I think it's shaved. Though. I don't think he does that. I don't think it's natural. Maybe it's partly with some of both. Anyways, but so the point is that we're in this space. We do this right now. So we're gonna have a conversation about AI as usual. Tyler, you're coming at it from a college kind of academic setting, right?
Yeah, it's collegiate work, some small business consultation. But
right? So I'm coming at it from enterprise B2B learning and L&D services. So, interesting. We have some different things going there, but I guess we should just like very briefly talk about those two dimensions. So, although I should say the dynamics you've dealt with are definitely in common on my side. The final look I think is a little different, but it's basically the same thing, right? So we have slightly different perspectives, and so what I'm talking about is basically that it was an interesting year last year. Last year was 2023. Last year was the year of the ChatGPT debut, right? So Gen AI coming on the scene. We're nerds, so we were early adopters playing with it right from the start, along with Toby. But last year was a bit of an interesting year, right? There's not another year like that, and it's already over. And what I mean is that there were some interesting kind of, call them knee-jerk reactions or whatever, when these tools first came online. And I find myself talking about those quite a bit in my classes because there's some interesting stuff there. And what I mean is, for you're in a school, and when the tools first came online, we had a situation where students were using ChatGPT, right? There was even a shorter window of time there where older people, i.e. faculty and teachers, they really weren't even super aware that these tools existed. So there was a magical window there where students could crank out an essay or whatever and go on in and get those essays getting a pretty solid grade. Now observe Toby as an aside. This is completely unrelated. Toby was a senior in college. He was graduating from NC State last year. So anyway, that thought just occurred to me. I think there's no connection between what we're talking about and his containing his mirth right now. Anyway, so big reaction, right? Don't use these tools. You're not allowed to use them. It's cheating. So I'll tee you up with that, and maybe you can expand a little bit.
In full disclosure, we've worked together for at least the last 3 years on one or more clients' work with artificial intelligence training. And
you're talking specifically about our L&D class that you primarily developed that.
Yes.
So it's AI. Now this is one of our corporate products. This is not a class that we worked on together at Wake.
Yeah. Looking at AI in the classroom, we find that there's a bit of a wave approach that kind of comes with that, and part of it is that so many of the students that we are dealing with have very little understanding and use of it, so that when it is coming onto the scene, it is a rather clumsy attempt, and it is easy to see. In that same vein, a lot of the teachers have no idea what it is, so when they use it, it is also a very clumsy attempt.
Because they're using it in like the most obvious way, right? There's no level of like a more elegant level of skill or whatever, right?
Yeah, so like if AI were an intern in your organization, you could certainly pass a project on to the intern and pass it directly to the customer or to the student without ever looking at it once. But down that road lies madness. You should always trust but verify. But there are so many people that use it in that manner that it begins to build a series like an arms race. We seed it and we use it, then the students want to use it. We recognize it and tell them they can't. They work around it. We start to see it, then we have to search for it. There's always ways of trying to get around the curve. So rather than giving out a very long, big paper assignment these days, we have to work around that. Students would very easily see a question that would ask, in the Hudsucker proxy, talk about allegory. they wouldn't know about that if they didn't have to, so they would grab it, dump it into ChatGPT, get whatever answer it is, and dump that
just
back
paste
in.
it, copy and paste.
And they're all done. They don't have to learn, they don't have to think about it, and if they didn't like it, it's not that much of a problem. So rather than asking for something big, now we ask for something small. Describe this scene. Describe the scene in the movie where the pants begin to tear in the stitching, but then tell us about something that happened to you in real life that is just like that. Please give us 4 sentences. By the time that they would take that and dump it into an AI and try to fix it, they could do it themselves much faster and much easier. But there's an even bigger problem, I think, that rolls into AI with education. And that is that familiarity breeds contempt.
Oh.
I know that sounds pretty bad. But when we started working with it, we started to recognize that it was really good and it was a go-to product. But then after a little while, you see it and you can recognize when someone is using it. And then when we see it in our own work, we go in and change it. We take the time to really become the wordsmith that goes with it. And when you see someone who took it out and dumped it on the page, that is an unacceptable amount of work. I can clearly tell that that was AI built and you didn't do anything, and I'm upset. And the more you use it, the easier it is to recognize it, and the easier it becomes to want to change what you see and to look down on someone who doesn't do the level of work that you yourself would bring to the table. So we find ourselves in a bit of a situation, and you and I have kind of talked about this before, where you have some people who don't know how to use artificial intelligence, and they will just dump whatever it is they receive directly on the plate. And it's real easy to see. And you have some people who use it so often that if you just pass off with small changes, it's not good enough. And what we tend to see is that if a student or a learner doesn't take the information and take the time to make it sound human, take the time to make it relevant to what we want to see from that assignment, what we want to see from the learning that happens, it is a bit like just asking anyone to do the assignment for you. It becomes very clear. And so what we try to do as we get into these assignments is try to make things more small, more personal, so that it actually becomes harder to use AI for that.
Interesting. All right, so you said a lot there. There's a few things I want to try to unpack there, if I can remember them all. So the first thing is, I guess, that last point you made, and you made it earlier too, it's not exactly where I was expecting you to go. So you're changing the design of your assignment, basically to make it impossible to use the AI.
You could still use it, but it would be so much more difficult. You'd spend more time and effort trying to make it seem like a human did it.
Yeah, by the time you
just doing it yourself.
You could just do it yourself. Yeah. So that's the second point that I just want to highlight. I'll talk about this more in a minute, but they don't use the AI anymore then when the AI is not saving them any time. That's the big appeal, right? So that's like the key point that I want to make, because that's basically, essentially, that's like the thesis of how you, or at least if you're in one of my classes, how we approach the usage. Because we don't want to clamp down on it. I mean, of course, in enterprise, these tools are there. Most people know it, right? Now, there is something analogous, which is that from a policy level, we're still in that phase where, because it's not okay to dump business-specific or proprietary data into ChatGPT, that's not allowed. So just like Google or, adult sites or something are blocked from the corporate firewall, so is OpenAI, right? So that's the case. However, it's not because the companies don't want to embrace AI usage. It's not that they don't want their people to use them, like especially if they are hip to the business case and they understand, hey, this might be able to save our people time. It's just because they don't have a way to use it yet securely and compliantly. So companies are coming online with internal AI environments and actually seeing more students in classes that have those environments. They're not allowed to use any of the retail AI tools, but they do have an AI tool there that's built right over top of ChatGPT-4 or something like that. So those tools, of course, work just the same. In some cases better, because when you do have one of those set up, you can load that data environment with all kinds of proprietary data. So now you've got an AI agent there that's like way more literate about the work that you're trying to use it for. But that's, it's early with that. But back to the main point, there's a time savings there to be had. So it's interesting that for your classes at the college, you're crafting things such that the assignment doesn't allow time savings with the AI, and that kind of disincentivizes them. Now, where I thought you were going to go with it was saying that the moment of 2023, and as we're at the end of 2024 here, that moment is past, and we're recognizing, like, okay, these tools are here, people are going to use them, but what we actually need to do is to provide enablement and to allow them to use them where appropriate, right? So you're not keeping them from using it either by prohibiting it or by designing the assignment such that they just don't get any value from using it, but you're incorporating AI into y'all's teaching and like kind of finding where it's the right tool for the right moment. Now, am I mistaken about that?
We're at a very weird situation with that, specifically because there is not one overarching policy for the entire school. There simply can't be. So, for instance, within the English department, you may have one person who says you're absolutely not allowed to use any AI services, and if we dump your work into this checker and it comes up, then you got a 0 and there's no recourse for you. But you may have another teacher who says you're absolutely 100% welcome to use ChatGPT or any AI agent, period. Here's what you need to do. You need to use it and you need to turn in a first draft. You need to give us the prompt that you used in its entirety, take a screenshot of it, and give us a link to that conversation. Then you take that and you can put it into a second conversation where you ask ChatGPT to move through that entire paper, refine it, fix it, expand it. Then you put it into a third conversation where you fact check your material and pass through. These steps are the same steps that you or I would take if we were writing a paper by hand, but just because they happen to have an artificial intelligence helping them with the paper, it doesn't mean they get to skip all those steps. They still have to do their own fact checking. But we have a third teacher at our school who says you can use AI all you want, but here's the deal: if you get a C on your paper, you receive a 0. There's no reason for him to look at any papers that you didn't write that aren't excellent level papers.
So the bar has been raised for the overall work product.
Yes,
because you've got this awesome tool now that should leave you with no excuse for anything but a B or better.
That's right. If he has to look at work that you did not write, you have to check it and make sure that everything is excellent. If it is excellent, but there's some kind of an error, you get a B. If it's anything less than an A-level paper, you fail.
So, interesting. So now we're starting to get into a little bit of divergence, I think, between your academic setting and the enterprise setting. So, although, again, like the dynamics at play are kind of similar, right? And I should say, too, if you did have an intern magically appear and you could pay that intern $20 a month, then that would seem pretty magical, right? Like there'd be a real temptation there probably to like offload all of your, you're overloaded with all kinds of work. And if you could shove some towards the intern, even though you're getting C-level work. Now, of course, in undergraduate, work might get a B, but that's not going to get a B in enterprise when you've got work being done by people who are like 20 years into their field, right? So if you think about a product owner or a project manager or something like that, most of those folks are, let's just consider like a more senior one. You know, people have been in corporate America for 10, 15, 20 years. The same content that got the B in your junior year of college might not hack it, right? So we're seeing some divergence, but some of the dynamics are the same. But the point is, even just having that intern. So imagine you had an intern that you could pay $20 a month, and it was very limited on the level of quality of its work product. That would still be pretty amazing if the intern could take a bunch of work off your plate. So that's kind of what we're seeing in the enterprise world. The other thing is, your use cases are sort of heavily slanted around like writing something or whatever, right? Like you're relying on the generative AI capability to write an essay or do something, right? Something where basically it's really obvious when it hits its ceiling, because there's a sophistication you're just not going to get without the human involved. But in enterprise work, imagine this: like, what if you had some work? So you said you could very easily begin to tell, and that I appreciate that. But what if you had a type of work that it wasn't easy to tell if the AI had done it? So what I'm thinking of is, like, imagine just a random example. What if you are an HR manager and you've got all these data sets and you've got to merge these data sets, right? So you already have to have some level of skill just associated with office work so that you can work in Excel or whatever. So you might have to go in Excel, maybe do some pivot tables on the merged data or something like that. Now, that's not really open to much interpretation, right? Like, the data gets merged or it doesn't. The work is correct or it's not. If there's errors or missing data, or there's errors in the schema or something, like, that's an error. That's going to be just as bad of an error whether a human made it or whether the AI made it. But if you can get the AI to do that data merge and there's no mistakes, that's the exact same work product. It's identical, right? Because you're not writing an essay. It's not subjective. It's not humanities-oriented work. It's the kind of professional work that people have to do, but it's quantitative. So generative AI and ChatGPT can do that kind of work too, right?
I would be very wary.
You should be wary. You should be wary. I'm not saying it now again.
No.
Now the same rule applies that you're saying, right? This is the other thing. We always say this usually within the first 10 minutes of class. You know, there's a short list of golden rules with generative AI. And one of the first ones is don't ever copy and paste a work product from generative AI without looking at it. But that doesn't change the fact that AI can do that kind of work, and it can do it correctly. Now, you have to have process in place to make sure there aren't errors, but it can do it. I'm just saying. So in my world, right, like, there's a lot of people, really quite senior people, project managers, managers of all kinds, HR professionals, analysts, specialists, functional people that are midway in their career or even junior. Ironically, sometimes I feel like the junior people, they have to bring human judgment in a little more, even if the work product is sort of quote unquote at a lower level. But when you just think about management work, program management, product management, people management, functional management, there's a lot of work there that's, on one level, it takes a certain degree of productivity and software skills. It also takes a good understanding of the overall context for what it is you're trying to do. But within that context, the human worker, the human manager, has to drive that work forward intelligently, right? But in order to do that, they may have to do 15 of those data merges at different points in time. Or they may have to summarize or extract action items or accountability from dozens of meetings. So if you have those meeting transcripts, that AI does pretty much as good or better of a job, even I would argue, at like scanning the transcript And
most
right.
definitely.
So then there's another thing here that is one of the kind of the principles that I've found myself going to. AI is there to save you time. To me, that's the golden rule. It doesn't matter whether it's AI or any kind of robot or machine that we're using to do work. The reason we have robots and machines is to do the kind of work that's repetitive, consistent. It's the same thing done the same way, maybe a lot of times in a row. Not there's nuance here, but I'm just saying in a very basic level, right? Like we have robots to automate work that is like robots are well suited to. Machines are well suited to do the same thing, screw the same lid on the same jar 10,000 times in a shift.
I might actually disagree on that.
Oh, where's my sound effect board? Okay,
There's no sound effect for it.
all right. Tell me
Put
about
that away.
Tell me about that. I'm gonna go back to this though.
No. We should definitely let you continue. But when you have something and the question comes up, what is this good for? It doesn't matter what it is. Like a pet. What is a pet good for? At the end of the day, the answer that usually pops up is it improves the quality of life. Maybe it makes you work faster, makes you feel better, makes you live longer, takes away your stress. When it comes to AI, you can use that in the workplace, but it doesn't have to just be for repetitive things. Many AI are really good at creative things. You might ask it to come up with a story, come up with a persona for your project. It doesn't have to do that over and over again. It can just do a one-off. Now, is it the absolute most creative thing that you've ever heard? No. But you can do creative one-off pieces as well as large repetitive. It's probably not highly cost savings to do that, but that is something that is certainly possible.
Okay, so I don't disagree with that at all, but let's just pick apart that a little bit. Okay, so
100%.
What you described to me, and you and I are both seasoned creative process professionals, right? You teach in a creative field, and I rely on the crushing need to be creative in order to solve new problems every day. But this is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. To be able to have as part of your job something where you have to create and generate things. So yes, AI can do some of that, but again, that's C-grade work, right? So no matter what is being created, same thing as you're saying in your classroom, the work, the excellence of the work product, there is no excellence with AI work products. Yes, not just in terms of what it generates. Now here's the nuance here though, right? What you're describing to me is an area where AI can assist with a particular phase of the creative or the problem-solving process. You're talking about generating ideas or ideating quickly. Now I love AI for that. But if you think about what you're describing the what in some ways is the grunt work, the grist for the mill that's going to become the solution.
It might be, I think you're kind of heading down the road towards prototyping, and I could definitely see a one-off. I would like to know what kind of things might be a good way to broach the subject with a client who works in Cambodia or something like that. Something I have no experience with, but the AI might be able to give me a list of items that would be creative to me. I could pull from those items and use that to start the conversation.
Yeah.
I might not have ever been able to reach that point without our trusted intern.
Well, but I mean, I don't think you would have to be ignorant about the customer in Cambodia. Let's say you were a seasoned senior account executive in Cambodia, right? You still need the generation, if you were really going to optimize your productivity, you still need conversation starters, ways to make the business case, value points that you could talk about, right? Now, as the seasoned senior account executive, you can totally come up with that stuff yourself. But wouldn't it be cool if you could use the AI to just blurb forth long lists of such fodder?
Oh, certainly.
And then you could apply your human judgment and say, that sucks, that sucks, that sucks. Ooh, that's a good one. I find myself having those interactions all the time. 90% of it is garbage. But this is the beauty of the AI. It can just produce so much. So like, even if 9/10 of it's garbage, and like even 99%, right? Like, you can sit there and in 10 minutes, you can produce talking point candidates or sales conversations or initial concepts for a prototype of some sort, or you can even just brainstorm on solutions to a business problem or something, and you're never going to copy and paste that, but it can absolutely create good solution candidates. Or even if none of those candidates themselves are able to run the gauntlet through the refinement process, it's still a great way to get you started, right? Like,
well, most definitely.
Even so, that's our senior AE in Cambodia. Like, even if they don't accept any of the the content points that AI generates, it's gonna like get their wheels turning. There's nothing to help you ideate and brainstorm on a good idea like seeing a bunch of bad ideas. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's really valuable. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have the AI, that's one of the reasons that initial like divergent piece of the design thinking process is so important, because we have to force ourselves to come up with a bunch of bad ideas, because we're going to pick the least bad one, or maybe there will be a good one, but we've got to brainstorm 50 candidates. 48 of them are probably going to be bad. That's still pretty hard work. It's hard work to ideate, even just to get... It's the volume that makes it hard, right? Like, it's not hard to come up with one goofy bad idea. But if you have to come up with 50 ideas as part of a divergent design process or problem-solving process, you're going to have to work as hard as you can just to get to 50. You're going to be putting every idea you can down. Indeed, like, that's exactly what they teach us in design school, right? Like, the first step is always just hitting a quota of as many ideas as you can. Quality doesn't even matter. That's brainstorming. That's what AI can help with. AI is awesome at that. And generally, like I'd say, of its 50 ideas, its ratio of okay, good ones to really bad ones might even be better than mine, But that's still just that initial batch. But my point is, you're coming up with 50 ideas. You're not trying to like really make your brain go white hot and come up with an inspirational, amazing solution candidate. And if you had to do that all the time, it would be exhausting. There are special people who can do that. Bless them, right? Mm. But like in the professional world, that's just not, there's not enough people like that. You know what I'm saying? But lots of people do have to creatively solve problems. And just to come up with 50 solution candidates, that's a grind, brother. Why? Because it's repetitive work. It's good for a robot to do. That's what I'm saying. So now, as you get into the further refinement, and you're going to take something to market, or you're past maybe those first few prototypes, you're starting to get into testing or something. I can assure you that whatever your solution candidate is, it will have come a long way from that initial AI generated fodder.
It would have to, or it would fail.
Totally.
Almost instantly.
Now, what if you get on down the development process, and you're into testing, and you have to figure out what are good test cases to write. Well, hey, right back to ChatGPT.
I think any time that there is like an expansion that is happening, and you're getting as many ideas out there as possible, that there's a great place for AI in that.
Exactly.
Now, as you take all those great ideas and try to refine them down, AI is going to take a lot of time. It's going to come up with so many failures along that road. There's not very much space in there at all for those ideas.
Well, is there or isn't there? I think it depends on how much savvy you have with the tool, right? So consider if you are refining, and let's say because you have this huge boatload of bad AI-generated ideas, you, the human, are starting to see at a higher level, I'm beginning to recognize why some of these are bad. It's because X is not an appropriate criteria for my solution. Now, you may have arrived at an insight like that 5 times more quickly because you had the instant AI fodder to look at. So the AI is helping you to recognize a higher order pattern of value, And so that, you get what I'm saying? So like that could be really valuable. So even as you're converging, it's not that you're using the AI and it's like in a one-to-one way to do the work of convergence, but the AI is offloading the grunt work, and it's kind of freeing up space in your brain to maybe have an insight about, oh, I just realized something about my this step in my development process. Now you can articulate that to the AI and apply it to other divergent ideation or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and at that point you would be expanding again. I don't think that you would say, okay, I liked, please take idea number 4 and make it larger. Also, could you make it have the word fun in a circular pattern? It might come up with something, but I think you would probably be better served to do it yourself as a designer. The place for AI refinement is very small. There is some, but the cases are few and far between. Whereas like expansion is always going to be a great spot for that.
Yeah, 100%. My point is, you're not just using the AI for expansive ideation or convergent refinement. You're using the AI to help you, the human professional, with your process. And the thing about that expansion and contraction is it's a bit of a rhythm, right? Like, and you encounter the need for both types all along the way as you move the ball down the field. It's just that at the 0-yard line, what you need to use expansive thinking to solve a problem for, it's something totally different. Like it looks totally different than at the 50-yard line. But the muscle, you're using the same muscle, right? So like imagine our prototyping line. We've got, we've ideated, we've selected, we've refined, maybe we've ideated again, we've selected, we've refined, we've done low fidelity prototypes, we've tested those against some human testers, right? By the way, the AI may have helped us ideate about how to quickly build low fidelity prototypes with the ideas we have, just saying. But then we're to like a product testing phase. And this is what I was saying about maybe now we're having a whole other expansive conversation with ChatGPT about coming up with a bunch of ideas for test cases, and maybe you recognize, or maybe your test manager recognizes these are bad ideas and this is why. Oh, and seeing all those bad ideas just gave me an idea. This is a criteria I really need. It's really important. This is going to have to go into every test case, right? So because of what the AI did, it's helping you converge in a way that's maybe a little easier or faster than you otherwise would have had. The AI didn't converge for you, you converged. But it was something that the AI did that triggered a convergence insight for you. And that's going to happen over and over, right?
I want to kind of break in here to just talk about creativity for a second. When you're working with AI, you run into a problem where you may have hallucinations. It tells you something that's clearly not correct. But rather than seeing that as an error, if you can look at that as creativity happening, you can find yourself in a much better spot, because a hallucination is something that isn't real. And for you and me, if I was to say, imagine a ball in a box, that's not real, but you can imagine what that would be like in your head. And when the AI hallucinates, it is doing that exact same creative process. So when I say to the AI, I am facing a court case where a dog shot a man with a gun, can you show me any case law on that? Okay, that doesn't exist, but it might say, oh yes, here's the case law, and it gives you an example of a hallucination. If you take the hallucination at face value, this is real, you're going to be extremely you're probably going to lose your license, but you're going to be extremely disappointed. On the other hand, if you take a step back and say, okay, it's given me this hallucination, it's not correct, but does an idea like this exist? Because that could point you towards an actual case that you could study. The creativity is like we see it as a failure. Look, I wanted a direct answer and you gave me a creative answer that wasn't real. But if you can look past the failure and see something like it's describing might actually exist, can we check out those venues and those ideas? You may find that the creativity that is being showcased might actually lead you in a direction that you hadn't gone in. And I think a lot of people overlook that.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm talking about. Bingo, right? It's a matter of understanding what and where and why the AI is good at something. And not just on face value, not just in terms of the content that it generates in a ChatGPT thread, but in terms of where can it help you, right? Like you just described a situation where that content wouldn't be any good at all, but it could help your process. That's what I'm talking about, right? So, but there's also all this work. Like I told you I was going to get back to this, right? There's still people who are driving forward projects that require that type of a process. At least in enterprise settings, those projects are very complex. There's a lot of strategic steerage that has to happen. Now that's something AI is definitely not going to do. But when you get into those projects, just because they're so complex, there's all these nodes of work. There's all this work that has to be done that is it's real grunt work, man. You know, like it really, at the end of the day, it requires some intelligence, but not that much. So the human project manager or whoever, they have to alternate their time between, you know, doing very high level communication with stakeholders to keep everybody coordinated in a very like human organization with politics and competing incentives and things like that. They've got to do that kind of thing. The AI is of limited value there unless it can save you 80% of the time parsing meeting transcripts to more quickly identify action items so that you can keep everybody on the same page about decisions that were made. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So but if you didn't have the AI, the project manager would, usually what the project manager had to do is either sit in the meeting themselves so that they could witness it and spend an hour of their time or whatever taking notes so that they can do the same thing that the AI agent can do in 30 seconds as long as you have a recorded transcript. And then the project manager can move on, right? But there's so much work like that. There's so much work that's just Excel tables and data sets and documentation and things that don't really take any elegance at all, right? I've got a demo that I do where I've been doing a project this year where I do a bunch of research. And I found these really good data sets that I needed that had all the information that I needed. And this is a well, we'll say it's a like a logistics project, right? So as part of this project, I had to do all this research on all of these ports and all this shipping data, right? And I just had to, I needed to find a bunch of information, and I found a data set that had all the information, but it wasn't really in it wasn't in the structure that I needed. And it also didn't have quite all the data that I needed. It had all the ports, all the cities, all the countries, the type of port that they were, every single one. This is a government data set, public domain. So all the information is there, but it's not in a spreadsheet, it's just a big wall of text, right? So the information is there, but it's not in the form that I need. I need to get that information, I need to get it into a table format that I can put into a spreadsheet so that I can do more analysis on it, sort things and stuff like that. I also needed to get the counts. I needed to understand how many of this type of port is in the city, how many of that type of port is in the city. Well, the information is inherently there in the data set because there's 7 ports listed of that particular type. But there's not a column of information that says number of ports 7. I could scrape that information and plop it into my AI agent, and it can generate that spreadsheet and add the column that has the count, right? And that worked like a charm. And you know how much time I saved versus I would have had to get that data into that spreadsheet no matter what. Now, had I an intern there, think about it. Like that's the perfect work for the intern, right? Mm-hmm. Right after the intern brings me my coffee, that's the type of work you're going to give them. So, but even senior level people have to do a lot of work like that. So that's where AI can help. And this is a point that I would just make in general, I find myself making all the time. I find when you're talking about the AI that writes the essay for a class assignment, you're talking about the AI generating something net new. Even in the middle ground use case, we're talking about the AI is helping you ideate. It's belching out a bunch of bad ideas so that you can help refine or get a grip on your ideation, right? So the AI is good at that. But it's still basically creating something, it's generating something, right? What I find the AI to be probably the most useful for is a situation where it's not actually creating anything, it's just manipulating something that you give it already. To me, that was an eye-opener, because I realized how often you have data or information or documents that you already have like the source material there, you know? And the AI has enough intelligence to sort, to identify insights, to do basic counting, to distill stuff, to synthesize things from a technical white paper into a training module, right? Or to take the technical white paper and give you a list of stakeholders that might be the right ones that you could go to, right? So I mean, yeah, it's kind of generating something there, but it's giving you something again where maybe you don't now have to spend. What would you do if you're a project manager and you have a very technical piece of subject matter that you're dealing with a project on, right? You've got to get your subject matter expert, your SME, you got to get SMEs involved to help you understand what to do. But if the information's so technical, you know you need the SME because it's technical, but it might be so technical you don't even know what kind of SME you need, right? So you don't even know who to email yet. So you've got to do a bunch of work just to run around and find like who are the technical SMEs that can help me with this. Once you find that out, which could take a week, then you've got to go and find, do we have those in my organization? What departments might they be in? You get what I'm saying? The AI can help you get through that kind of thing in 5 minutes. And now you still got a lot of work to do, but like you've just saved 2 weeks. Because now you've got a list of people that you can go ahead and start calling. And then when you do get a meeting with that SME, what if you show up armed with a B- agenda that at least gives you a framework for your conversation, so you've got questions you can start asking that SME and you can start really getting into the nitty-gritty. You might have just saved 3 weeks in a corporate environment with that kind of stuff, right? You might have just saved 5 hours consolidating the data set. People in enterprise have to do stuff like that all the time. But you're not really relying on the AI to create the work product. You've got work products that you need derivative work products from. AI is much better at that kind of stuff. And I find that if you understand how to do it right and you have good user skills with the AI agent, you can get way better than C-level work with that kind of stuff. And in the case of the data set, if it's quantifiable work product, you do have to check it for sure. Make sure it didn't transpose a row label or miss a piece of data or something. That stuff does happen. It happens all the time, right? So there's time required still to quality check that work. But there's ways that you can do that. There's ways the AI can help you do that. There's ways you can use multiple AIs to quality check. So the time you save still on balance can be huge. But yeah, that's the point that I want to make. It's not as much about generating as it is just manipulating. And the AI can be really good at that. So that's something I've found. When you show project and product and program managers and HR managers and people like that, functional managers, you show them how to use the AI for doing things like that, like they love it because that's the grunt work. It's repetitive, it's boring, we hate doing that work, but it's got to be done. So it's a different kind of automation. You're not just completely automating something, but you're automating little chunks of the thing. You're automating the chunks that are like boring, but still got to be done. So I don't know what you think about that.
I think you should cut this content that we're talking about right here. I have literally no idea what we're supposed to be talking on, and I haven't known for about 15 or 20 minutes.
That's all right. I'm pleased. Toby, you can work with this, right? I got thumbs up from Toby. Early on, you said that we were going to talk about AI and education, and then I don't know what we're even talking about now. Well, I'm taking you to school right now, brother. It's perfectly relevant.
It's working out great. But I mean, like, do you want me to be talking about like small business consultation and how they use it? Do you want? I mean, like, I'm not really sure what my role is.
All right, hold
here.
on. Take a breath. Take a breath. Just. Well, so how would you use AI for small business consultation?
I think that sounds like a great thing to talk about. So a lot of people, if they're looking in small business consultation, they have ideas and things that they want to do, but they don't know how to get from where they are to where they want to be. So for instance, if they say, we would like to have somebody come on board and help us with social media, we deal heavily with Twitter. Okay, what do you mean by heavily? Well, we put out at least 3 tweets a month, and that's pretty bad. Or they say, yes, we had a designer who came here and they showed us 3 tweets as their, or 3 Instagram posts as a campaign, and that's what they did every time. But if we show them how to use the tool, or we use it for them, we can build out 300 or more tweets for them to look at, and they're mostly schlock. But if you give us all day to work with your content, it would be no problem for them to come up with hundreds, 300 really good ones. That's 6 tweets a day, every day for 52 weeks. And like 3,000, what are you going to do with all these tweets? A bunch of them are junk. But if you give someone 8 hours working with ChatGPT, they could easily knock that material out, rather than paying a full-time social media person to come in and do that. They can get a bunch of B+ mediocre level work in 8 hours. They can hire somebody and get all that stuff knocked out. You might have someone who says, this is our product, we need to have a white paper built. I could write that paper, but we could take all of their material, move it through AI, and get a first or a second draft put together, and then hand that to a copywriter for $25 an hour or whatever, and have them clean that up, add a couple of tables of data, and then get something really nice. A lot of times with small business, they don't have the money to hire a SME to do any of those jobs. They have to try to find whatever it is that they can pull together. And so being able to use an AI assistant to help them build out pages for their website, to be able to build out the social media pieces that are just fairly general, but it can help build that brand out. Something they can use to bolster the services or the products that they have. It can kind of get their foot in the door.
Yeah, exactly. Because why? There's value in a certain dimension just of volume. That's what you're saying, right? Mm-hmm. In a small business setting, people don't have enough time to maximize their social media output because it's all they can do just to get 3 a month or whatever.
Right.
It happens all the time. Happens in enterprise all the time, right? It's not just a small business setting. But so again, yeah, like that's the magical quality. It's the magical quality of a robot or machine. What's the robot or machine good at? Volume, right? Like anytime there's a situation where you need something done over and over faster just so that you can produce the volume that you need, if it's the right fit, then the AI can help a lot. Now, if each single one has to be a nugget of wisdom, maybe not. But what if you have a big Excel document that has your product team's schedule of the discounts or whatever, or the feature release schedule, or what if your marketing team has a schedule for the whole quarter of the coupons or the specials, whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's very dumb information, but you still got to get that info out there. The AI didn't come up with the discount schedule or the feature release plan or any of that stuff, but you still want to promote it. Like that type of a use case, the AI could write those social media posts all day long and they'd be perfectly okay. You're not trying to get cute every time. You're just trying to get the info out there, and you're not getting your outreach. You're not amplifying your social media reach as much as you want because you just don't have time to produce the volume. Now, if you're trying to come up with joke of the day, then, well, you're screwed.
Yeah.
But if you're just trying to advertise, coming next week, this is the feature. Coming next week, this is the feature. It's repetitive. You're trying to make sure that your messaging is out there at high enough of a volume. So it's the volume that the AI helps with.
Well, that is correct, but there's
there's no buts. This is the way it is.
One problem that can arise from that, and this is something that happens with the small business consulting, and something that can happen on an enterprise level as well. What if I did provide you with, let's say, 400 tweets for your top 5 products? Who's going to put that into the system? How many man hours is it going to take for a human to look at each one of those, approve or disapprove, put them in a time slot so that they automatically post? Sometimes we can provide as many pieces of information as a company needs, but they don't have the infrastructure or the manpower to make it a doable product. Hey, thank you for this. Our social media team does need this. It would take us at least 2.5 weeks of time to look over this content, make any changes, and then put it into the system. And if we were to take that time off of all of our projects, we would be so far behind we wouldn't know what to do. So thank you for this list. We're going to set it in a folder over here, and we'll look at that later.
It's a different problem, though.
It's definitely a different problem.
You're not getting your stuff published in either situation, but in one situation you got something to publish, and one you don't. Like if you don't have that much time, if you don't have the resources to, because for one thing, the answer to your original question is, well, it's the intern. Obviously, that's who pushes all the stuff out. But if you can't afford an intern, you definitely can't afford the content generation. So you've gotten one step down the road. Like, are you successful with your business objective yet? Well, no, but you just got some help from AI. You're closer than you were. That's how I would encourage people to think about it, right? Like the AI, especially in enterprise, the AI is not going to do all the things for you. And that's, I think, a big misconception. And it's one of the reasons why, for decision makers or something, they see one example of bad AI output and now they're skeptical. They're Luddites about the AI because they have a very simplistic view, and they don't think that the AI is never going to successfully take my thing from dev to prod and all of the process points and all the little tasks that have to be done. Well, yeah, that's true. The idea is there are probably points along that workflow where the AI can do the thing. So the overall workflow has been made 80% more efficient, or let's say it's 98. At enterprise scale, brother, if you can go from a 100 to a 98 and you carve away 2% efficiency, dude, you just saved $1 million. So that's why it's interesting at AI or at an enterprise level for AI, right? Because there's all kinds of little nodes and steps along the way where the AI can help, because there's all kinds of little nodes where there is grunt work. Getting the content published on your Instagram is still grunt work. It's just not quite grunty enough for the AI to do all those things. Although it could, if you wanted to invest in a development solution. It's just how much time do you want to invest in the solution. But even without investing very much, there are points along the way on the workflow where the AI can help.
Oh, sure. And if you're a single person, if you're a one-man gang,
you don't have to pick on my dating status now, Tyler. Come on, man. Nah, I'm happily married. Anyway, go ahead.
Jokes within jokes within jokes.
We're trying not to make too much editing work for Toby here. Oh. So in the future, just laugh heartily and move on. You just laugh really hard.
Anyway.
Still a little dead air there, Toby. You'll have to clip so it actually seems.
Yes. Anyway. If you're a one-man gang, having somebody put up 300 social media posts even if you can't do them, you could work at them in the middle of the time instead of having to come up with those ideas by yourself, or a definite time saving. A one-man gang might save 35 or 85% of the time that they set aside for making social media posts by using AI. Enterprise, they're a little more quality driven. And for a one-man gang, you might just be trying to get your name out there. And you can define that brand as you rise faster and higher.
There's a lot of functional needs at enterprise scale and departments and things like that where it's a one-man gang. By the way, you know why I like Fatboy Slim's music?
Ooh, tell me about that fat boy.
I don't know why it's a band, because it's a one-man name. It's a one-man name. Anyway, we have once again consumed an hour on the Enterprise Pod. So at this halfway point of the discussion, I'd just like to take an opportunity to see if Toby'd like... We're getting a rise out of him, right? It's great. It's great. It's only 9:51 p.m. Toby woke up like 3 hours ago, so this is this is when he's freshest. So we want to take advantage of this.
I like the way he was brushing his teeth while we were talking. That was nice.
He was brushing his teeth with a particular finger on his hand, I noticed.
Hygiene's important.
I had something else I wanted to share. Oh yeah, I said at the beginning I have resisted doing a pod on AI. I'm sure you're burning with curiosity as to why. Care to venture a guess?
Do tell.
Because everybody's talking about it, dude. And I really like to talk about unique stuff that other people aren't talking about quite as much. But I love AI. It's amazing, and it's going in an incredibly amazing direction. And we're at a point where we have to talk about it because there's really so much utility there that it can be used for. So the answer is not to prevent people from using it. I guess I'll just make that little rant. But it takes a particular type of usage. Have you ever seen somebody who didn't go to design school get handed a copy of Photoshop? Or even Illustrator, maybe?
All the time.
All the time. And now the work product that gets generated, not the best, but they can crank with Photoshop and produce all kinds of stuff. It's really the same with the AI tool, right? The tool's the tool. The tool can do all kinds of stuff. The tool can do bad work. The tool can do good work. The difference is in the human user or the human operator of the tool. So there's a lot of upside to be had, and there's a ceiling that hasn't even begun to be reached, just in terms of what the tool can be used for in a valuable way. The way that it can be used in a valuable use case is look for work that's boring, look for work that's repetitive, look for work that can kind of take a little bit of the boring work off of you, so that you're in a process where your higher order cognitive skills are being applied better. But yeah, it's the repetitive, boring, mechanistic work that AI can help with, and there's a lot of professional work out there like that. That's why paralegals and stuff like that are sweating. The robots are coming for their jobs because sorry, but there's a lot of clerical work there that has to be done, but it doesn't take a whole lot of brain power. And that's where AI can help a lot.
Well, in graphic design, we've got a slightly different problem in that...
And I should clarify, you're a graphic design professor.
That's right. So I teach advertising, graphic design, digital media, web development, simulation, game design. It's a veritable cornucopia. It's a vast tapestry.
It's a rich tapestry in the evolutionary landscape of media.
But within advertising and graphic design, someone who is a mid-level graphic designer at best, but knows how to use AI, will take the job of a great designer who doesn't know. I'm sad to say. And a crappy designer who knows how to use AI will take the job of a mid-level designer who doesn't know how to use it. And someone who has no understanding of graphic design could very well use AI to take the job of a very poor designer. And, right now, you can open Microsoft Word with Copilot embedded and say, I'd like to have a picture of people with 4 different nationalities smiling together and holding a textbook with an autumn background, and it will make it. Is it the best photo that you've ever seen? No, but it was fast and the price was right. And if you can have that at your fingertips, anybody, anytime, without having to pay a photographer or pay a designer, that means that there are many designers out there who, if they don't know how to use the tool, are going to get supplanted by someone who doesn't know. And the more people who don't know that use it means you're going to receive a low-level sameness of quality.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe as AI expands and does better, you'll find that it gets better overall. But the possibility is very likely that over time everything will look and feel the same, and at that point a graphic designer who is really good and knows how to use AI can bob to the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
And
There's
individuals with talent will bob up and really take over.
But there's something else about this, though, that has to be kept in mind, especially in the enterprise setting. You remember years ago when we took our PMP boot camp?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so you remember one of the things we learned about?
Shout out to Dave Cockman.
Oh, back in yesteryear. Yep, Kakamo, you're a good man, buddy. We learned about the difference between quality and grade. You remember that? So grade and quality have some attributes in common, right? If you levels of purity for a certain metal, for instance, or whatever. But especially when you're working in very contextual projects or particular needs that are really niche, or you're operating at enterprise scale basically. So like there's all kinds of different needs and things like that. There are needs where a certain grade of material is of the appropriate grade, right? You might be able to work with a really crude, impure type of ore or crude oil or something, right? For one application, but for another one, you need a really pure, high-grade product. But grade is a matter of what's appropriate, right? Now, to a similar degree, so is quality, but quality is different. Quality is a subjective value that's defined by your user or customer. How well are you solving their problem, right? Like how well is the output meeting the need? So in the case of your professor who lets the students use AI, they appreciate that. They understand there's a place for mid-grade inputs, but the final work product has to be of a certain level of quality. And using mid-grade inputs can actually achieve a higher final level of quality because you've got more tools there. So I guess you see where I'm going with this, right? So like the key is to identify where are you really talking about quality and where are you really talking about grade. If you need C grade clerical or cognitive work, great opportunity for AI, especially if it's repetitive or boring, right? But the overall solution, that's where quality comes into play. Now, gold plating is really common too. People love to come up with all kinds of ideas about how they think they can make something better. But it's not up to them. It's up to your customer, right? Like quality is defined by how well it meets the customer need. Delighted, happy customers that come back and buy from you again. That's what quality drives. Anyway, I thought it was worth a word about the difference between quality and grade. Because what we're talking about with cognitive work, AI is by definition, it's a machine that can do cognitive work. So, but there's different grades of cognitive work. Merging a data set is like a fairly low-grade cognitive task that if you don't have AI, still takes a human to do it. Not the best use of that human's time, right? So anyway, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Translation is excellent. Going from one programming language to the next, to being able to go in and reduce and refine content is really nice. There's any word that's going to be, expansive or contractive or translational is going to work out very, very well.
100%. Well, you have once again spent what is up to this point in time both the highest grade and the highest quality hour of your time listening to some of the best conversation that you'll be witness to, at least until the next episode comes out, and we'll aim higher then. But for now, that's a little over an hour, so I guess we should stop. Plenty more we could talk about. So I'll have you back. Probably we'll talk about AI some more. But you remember that episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where they decided to have the podcast, the radio show or something? Toby, you know the one I'm talking about? You can give me a nod if you remember. Yeah, so they decided they're gonna have a radio show or something, and so Dee and the brother or whatever, they're kind of trying to vamp and have conversation, you know. And then Dee's she's like, I know. Let's talk about technology. We're always talking about, people are always talking about technology on these shows. I'm just going to say that and then reiterate I've been resistant to talk about it on the pod. But I think there's a lot of good things we could say about it. But anytime we have these conversations, I'm always thinking about Sweet Dee. We're like, let's talk about technology. And then they can't really think of anything to talk about. They're like, oh, technology. It's so awesome, isn't it? Wow. All right, Tyler, you get the last word, dude. Anything you want to say?
Thank y'all for coming out.
Yeah, what kind of work are you available? Are you available for work? Are you taking consulting clients, or are you slam busy at the school these days?
Consultation work is on an as-needed case basis.
Got to be really important work, like coming over here to do this with me, for instance.
No, but in all honesty, consultation work is often difficult to fit in edgewise, and it is something that requires a great deal of planning, but more often than not, the client has to be right.
Yeah, well said. Well, at a minimum, we'll stick your LinkedIn profile in the notes.
Okay,
and,
I'll take it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and otherwise, just makes me that much more grateful for giving us a little of your time.
Well, thank you very much for having me out here today. I hope to come by sometime in the future.
Oh yeah, I'll be bugging you. We'll see you next time, everybody. Thanks. All right, is my volume up?